Bonjour and welcome into the cave. Today's guest writes lyrics that are painfully relatable. From mental health, family dynamics, loss, or working a 9 to 5, is giving a mix of hard-hitting and yet comforting feelings. With their latest album, I Hope You Heal, they definitely belong amongst those great bands from this new wave of emo and earn their self-given title of Oldenburg's happiest side dudes. Joost of Catapults is here with me today. Hi, Joost.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be called something like that because I always struggle considering myself an artist, quote unquote. And yeah, it's really nice to know that what we do resonates with people this much.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the album is really great. The lyrics really resonate and it's catchy, it's sad, it's comforting. And this is what I like in this genre. I don't know if I think it's that for a lot of people that, you find it comforting and indie also makes you cry at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the big things that really like make the genre and the community we're in like stand out, because I think there's few other genres where you can like make an effort to like transport two kinds of feelings in a single song by splitting it up between like listening to the instrumental or listening more to the lyrics. That's one of the things that really make me excited to come onto the podcast, because when I checked your episode history and the guests you've had on, doing something that really focuses in on lyricism, lyrics is something that I think is sometimes sorely missing from music discourse these days. So props to that. I really like that.
Thank you. And yeah, this is what we are here for. As I was saying, you released your album, I Hope You Healed, in 2025. So I guess this was a pretty packed year for you. What was the feedback? How was the year?
Yeah, 2025 has been very weird and very interesting. There's been a few high highs and a few weird lows. Because yeah, we spent most of the year preparing the release of the album, and that kind of meant that we were kind of MIA, kind of off the grid for almost half a year last year, because we were really busy like behind the scenes and doing stuff that didn't really like reach the outside of our bubble and outside of our band and our crew for a while. So there was a lot of anxiety involved in that, because I was constantly thinking like, oh my God, we're not playing any shows until June. We're not really, engaging with people that much online, and we're kind of keeping everything on the down low. But I think at the same time, what that did was make the, let's call it, return much more gratifying and satisfying, and like to be back on the stage and to be presenting new music had a really different kind of impact on us, because we've been terminally online before that, and trying to play the social media game and being absent from that for a bit and much more selectively going at social media and posting on the internet, made us just realize that we're not that kind of band. And there are bands that work really well with that. And there are bands that, like this constant engagement and the feeding of the algorithms and everything. And I think just learning that we're not that kind of band was something very valuable from last year. And then obviously the album came out, and it was very heartwarming and just wholesome all around release cycle. There was a lot of stuff going on, of course, behind the scenes, with designs, with music videos and visualizers that we all had to produce last year. And there was a lot of like concessions we had to make, because it was the first release in a while that we did without any like major label support, because we went away from Uncle M and we self-released it with help from Blood Blast, which we joined last year. And so there was a lot more stuff that we just had to take our own responsibilities for, and we worked together with people whom we wanted to like give the opportunity to say, I've worked and contributed to an album release, especially with our friend Brian, who's been making all the videos who's been directing, doing a lot of work behind the camera. He designed the album cover. He designed the limited zine that we released. So there was a lot of stuff just coming in and being worked at the same time. By the end of September, when the album released and when we prepared for tour, there was we did feel a heavy load like lift up off our shoulders, because that was the point when the really gut-wrenching stuff was out of the way, like releasing the album, trying to anticipate how people would react to that, constantly monitoring single listens and engagements and everything, and the whole numbers stuff. And it is unfortunately like an integral part of what bands do these days, but it's not something that I particularly enjoy, because I like the thought that as long as someone is listening, that is good enough for me. But the way everything like played out at the end, really made the whole year worth it. And the tour was great. I know it was only Germany. We only went around Germany. But having those shows and having some headline shows on our own tour sell out for the first time was something that I just thought was really, really special. And I don't take anything like that for granted ever. So yeah, it was a very interesting year, and we're happy to start something new in 2026, perhaps. We're working out how we want to continue from here on out.
Yeah, congratulations for this year, because in the end you blessed us with 5 music videos. Do you have 5 music videos for the album?
I think it was let me think. Yeah, we did one full music video for the for Birdsong with the album release, and we had 4 singles before that. Yeah, we tried to pan out everything a bit more. It's the concessions you have to make to the way the music industry works these days. People just tend to gravitate towards singles more, and so we had to play that game in a bit in a way.
I don't think a lot of artists or bands are at their core this type of person. They just have to become it if you want to survive.
Yeah. There's it's something that is more thrust upon most artists as opposed to something they actively seek out. Just because I don't know, I'm one of those people also who just love to listen to albums. I rarely listen to like random playlists or like curated playlists. I just like the experience of having an album, and I think the more you treat it as such in the release cycle, the more rewarding it will be in the end when you listen to the whole thing. And that was something that was really important to us too, like just selecting the right songs and trying to find like a balance in how much do we want to like spoil, quote unquote, of the whole album experience, and what songs do you want to show off beforehand, and how much variety do you want to hold back so people still have something that feels fresh, essentially. Definitely. When the album comes out.
And talking about albums, so since you listen to full albums, what is one perfect album for you from A to Z that should be like a whole experience?
One of the obvious things that first comes to mind to me is also because it was a very formative album for me, and also shout out because he was on the podcast. That's Wildlife by La Dispute. I adore that album. I adore that band, pretty much everything they've put out, but Wildlife has like cemented itself as like such a powerfully profound experience to me in my teenage years around the time it came out. And it never like lost that impact, especially with like repeat full listens. And it is definitely an album that is made to be listened in one session front to back. And it does that absolutely perfectly, I think.
Yeah, Jordan Dreyer is he's made to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will always be jealous of this person's just writing abilities. Yeah, how some of the stuff that he's written down and performed came to be, I will never fully grasp, I think. That's just a talent completely of his own, I think.
But I guess everyone has their own style, because in the episode he's saying that he would like to be able to tell more with less words, because he's very descriptive in the way he's writing. So even if you are known to be the best at what you do, you're never happy with what you're doing.
It's a the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
A situation, I think, because there's bands that are so concise. There's like Turnstile can put out a message in like 8 bars and make it concise and make it clear and make you like hop onto it and make it catchy, and at the same time something that really like speaks to the ideas of community that they always have. And then there is someone like Jordan who just goes so into detail, but I think especially that kind of detail is what makes his work tick in a way.
Exactly.
And I'm still trying to find that middle ground where I belong and where we as a band belong, because I'm not the only one who writes the lyrics. A lot of that comes from our drummer, Malte. It's always like a game of give and take and measuring out what kind of writing style you put out there and how you can work together on a thing that doesn't feel like disjointed, because it's multiple people who have been working on it. So that's always a thing that we're trying to improve on. So I can definitely relate to Jordan in that far.
We will talk a bit more about your own lyrics a bit later on the episode, but first we are going to talk about the first line that you wanted to talk about, which is from the song One True Color by Enter Shikari. And it's funny because you're not the first guest choosing an Enter Shikari song. We love Enter Shikari here. So
yeah, great band, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. And so the line is, there is so much to explore, there is so much to absorb, and then the atoms that you borrowed, they are returned to the cosmos.
It's so beautiful. There was a lot of things on my mind when you asked me about like a line from other people's lyrics, but for some reason I just keep coming back to that line because I think it came out at a very like formative time in my life, late teenage years, just about to finish school. And there was some like insecurities in myself insofar as like, what kind of person am I? How do I want to present myself? How do I want to think about the world? And what kind of thoughts and ideals and goals do I have? There was a few like different friend circles I was engaged in at the time. There was the people I used to like play video games with, and I really liked those people. And I still have a certain fondness for the time we spent together. But on the other side, there was the friend group that I, as it turns out, still have much more contact with to this day, who are much more engaged in other things and much more leaning in a different political direction than those guys I used to play video games with. There was a time when that Enter Shikari album came out, when some of those people in that one friend circle started to like listen to some bands that were like ostensibly like right-wing leaning. There's always a debate about that with a few German bands. And when they seriously started to listen to those bands, I was kind of taken aback by that, because I wouldn't have figured those people to be like that. Because, I consider myself to try that I'm a kind person, that I try to be a kind person. And that kind of like worldview just does not align with what I think the world should work. And at that time, at that like weird juncture in my life, that Enter Shikari album came out, and it was at a time when I was opening up to music as a whole anyway. There was a time when I was kind of anti on like a whole lot of like heavy music. I didn't get it. I didn't appreciate it for some reason. And that was right at the time when I warmed up to a lot of bands. When I was warming up to bands like La Dispute or Bring Me the Horizon or Northlane. And that's when the Minesweep also came out. And that line just unlocked something, I think, within myself in terms of how I want to like go out into the world and how I want to approach the world as a whole, as someone who was like getting into the age where you're considered an adult. And it was quite like identity forming at that time, I think. And that's why it's a line that I keep thinking back to even to this day, even though the album is And I looked it up. I think exactly at the time of this episode's release, the album will be exactly 11 years and 1 day old.
Really?
So it's been with me for a while, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there is always this question, which is not a question for me. It doesn't look like it's a question for you, that I love to listen to bands that I can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
If the music is good, but I don't relate to the lyrics, I don't relate to the values, I don't have any attachment to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was also part of it. And it feels, being forced to engage with that almost feels alienating sometimes because, it doesn't align with what you think and how you see the world and how you see people. And it makes you feel out of place in a way. And that's why I really just done at that point and in the years after that, I really, it wasn't even like by ill will, but I just started to like lose contact with those people simply because I felt like that was not the right company for me anymore. And it's tough because you lose friends that you've been with for 5-6 years. You spend a quite sizable portion of your life with. But that was one of the things where I, at some point, said to myself, okay, we haven't been in touch for a while. And at this point, I don't need to seek it out anymore.
Yeah, it's good to just know that you grow up, especially at this age, you can change from one year to another and you just have different opinions. And
absolutely. And it's also about, setting boundaries in so far as like how much you want to tolerate and how, and if I hadn't like set that boundary at that time, it would have like inevitably led to conflict somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a person that likes to engage in conflict. Just that's not in my blood, I think.
And I feel like Enter Shikari is the perfect example to talk about that because they are very vocal about what they stand for. And I've seen live footage of that were 10 years old where Rao Reynolds was wearing a Free Palestine shirt when no one was doing it, at this time.
Yeah, they've been so ahead of the curve in so many ways. And they absolutely bang live. I've seen them twice, only twice. I know a few people in my friend circle have seen them like in the double digits, but I've only had the pleasure of seeing them twice in the past 10 or 11 years. But they've been going hard every single time, and they've been so consistent with what they do. And the Mind Sweep, I listened to it in preparation for the recording session today while I was out getting groceries, and I was stunned just by how relatable and how current those lyrics and those songs are to this day, even though it was like 10 or 11 years ago that they wrote those songs. And it's horrifying to think about the fact that it was just 1 year back then. It was just 1 year away from the first Trump presidency. And I don't want to really open that can of worms, but just to think about the like time relations and the way time works in that way is just terrifying. Awful.
Coming back to the line, so you're talking about the way that it really shows that we are just one small piece in the bigger picture. How do you see it? Is it more like whatever you do, you're just one tiny ant on this earth, or we are part of a bigger thing and, we have to live together? How is it for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like the idea of the individual. That much I can say. I like the thought that as a person, I have agency over myself, over how I carry myself and how I engage with other people that also have this kind of individuality to them and live it, and they have free will just like everyone. But at the same time, it's always just in a way important to realize we're made of the same basic components of matter. No one is special on a like physiological level. We step out of the same kinds of wombs and we get buried in the same kind of tombs. Nice. I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but that was fun.
Keep it for your next song.
Yeah. And it's a very comforting thought at the same time to like have this awareness for this collectiveness, that, you know, we're all made from the same kind of stardust stuff. That is, you know, one of the things that The One True Color as a song, and those lyrics specifically, like, stand out to me so much, because, you know, before listening to that song, I never really thought about the idea that every atom, every element that we're made of was, like, evidently at one point part of one, like, singularity of matter that just exploded out somewhere. And everything that happened since then has been like an increasingly strange and wonderful, like, chain of coincidences that have led to us being here, you know? So I like to think back to that bigger picture, especially like that scientific bigger picture, because I think it's something very comforting that you know, we were lucky enough to exist. And I think that is something that there should be more awareness for, in a way.
When you think about this line, or when you realized what it meant, has it changed a bit the way you see how you live, how you act?
It has changed my thinking, definitely, but it's less so in the way of acting, because I'm very prone to distractions. I'm very prone to being distracted from things. The you know, exploring and absorbing stuff just falls by the wayside sometimes, which is only a human thing, because, you know, we have to survive and we need money to survive. And that means we have to work to have the money to survive. And that often just, you know, collides with the urge that we humans have to explore, to learn, to absorb, because there is only so much time in a day, of course. And I like sleeping, unfortunately. I like sleeping a lot. And I like playing my silly video games and getting sidetracked with stuff. But it's more so that those lines, those lyrics have changed my outlook on how I approach fellow humans, and how I think about even mortality in a way. Because, yeah, you know, when you think about where the atoms in your body come from, there has been this chain of things going on, like where your parents had to eat food because a little you was growing somewhere. And where did that food come from? Because all of that food, you know, there is no matter gets lost ever. You know, that's like one of those physical principles. So that matter you're made up from has to come from somewhere, and that had to come from somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else. And I don't know, it does give some semblance of, like, even though I'm not a really, like, religious person, some sense of, like, spiritual togetherness that you really are with what you are right now, that you end at some point sooner or later in time, and that all of the things you're made up of, like, have been borrowed, and they will be returned to whatever is out there. And to think that the atoms that I am made up of right at this moment will, you know, in a few billion years, will probably be floating off somewhere, like, way out in space, because of whatever might happen, is something that I take a lot of just comfort in. And so in that part, it has, I guess, influenced my especially my outlook on mortality and death and dying a bit. I'm still afraid of death. I'm still absolutely mortified of the idea of just the act of dying, and have awareness for the fact that all of the matter that exists on Earth, and every person that has lived and will live and is living right now, is just part of the same, you know, pool of molecules, in a way.
But it's also interesting what you are saying, because so you were talking about very scientific, proven facts, and also bringing the point of spirituality, which I actually think can go together, because first of all, spirituality is so wide. Doesn't necessarily mean religion or anything. And I don't know if any scientists will listen to us, or I don't know if what I'm saying is bullshit. But I think they can go together. It would be very
funny, though. They can absolutely go together. So that's one of the things that have spawned from that. To me, one of my few ways of, like, engaging with, you know, beliefs and sort of, like, religious-esque views. I'm not a religious person, as I said. Both my partner and I, we both grew up, like, in Christian households, but more like the casual Christians, thankfully. But we also both fell out of faith with church and Christianity and religion quite hard. And we've been talking about that a lot. And we've both come to the idea that something like has to be there, and something could or might be there. It might not be a god in the literal sense, but some kind of like collective overarching power. So one of the things that I really have come to like appreciate in that way is the idea of the sun itself. And disclaimer, this might get into a bit of hot water because there are a few other like cultish beliefs and belief systems that have like veered towards the sun as the object of their belief systems, and done horrible things with that. And I think even some right-wing like splinter groups have been engaged with that. But the thing about the sun is, I think it is as close to like a cosmic entity and cosmic god as we humans can possibly like see and perceive, because you have to just think about the idea that every human who has lived and will live sees the same bright white yellow dot up there in the sky, and it has been there like ever since humans have been around, just like the moon. And that big orb, that big burning orb, is what made life in the way it exists as it exists today possible in the first place, and is just as capable of snuffing all of that out in an instant. Technically, will never happen in our lifetimes, but it could technically happen. And what about that is not like what people attribute to gods? Responsibility for life, for warmth, for people existing in the first place, the unimaginable power to erase humanity instantly. It's all right there. And it's one of the things that you just can see in plain daylight every day, and that every person ever has looked upon. And so that kind of thinking is something that I've grown really fond of. Just, trying to see something spiritual in the things that are scientifically proven and factual. And that's mostly where I stand. I don't pray to the sun every morning, right? I don't look out to my east window when the sun rises and pray to it, but it's very nice to have that thing and be aware of like what it has meant to humanity as a whole, and how lucky we are to be in the inhabitable zone, because that kind of coincidence is so incredibly rare in the universe.
Yeah. And also I think that having some kind of beliefs, whatever they are, as long as they do not harm anyone, what can give you hope, can
Absolutely
make you keep on going, and thinking that you are not fully 100% responsible for everything happening, and that there will always be. Today I saw a quote, I don't remember from who it is, but it was like, whatever you're doing, life has more imagination than you. And so that means that there will always be something that you cannot plan.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And it's exactly, what you said. I always think it's perfectly acceptable to believe in anything as long as you stay tolerant of other belief systems, as long as you don't force it upon others, and as long as whatever you believe in does not go, at the harm of other people. As long as you're doing that, I mean, whatever works for you is fine, fine by me in a way, honestly. But yeah, I've grown somewhat disillusioned with religions overarchingly, but I like the idea of, believing in something that steers your life in a way that is hopefully positive and leads to a positive outcome for you and those around you. Yeah.
And this song is also against religion, or at least what we have done of religion. Because if you look at the very first principle, I don't know much about religion, but for me, the main principles are to help other people, to always love people. At what point did it? I don't know.
I blame the Middle Ages, honestly. And I blame the way church was being monetized at one point in time, and about how like fervent people have been, I think, and committing atrocious acts in the name of a god is something I will never get behind, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And this song is so also talking tackling this principle?
Yeah, really hard. And I think just the way it's trying to give you perspective without being, too preachy. And at the same time, it works just as well. It's a song that distinguishes red and blue. And, looking to, for example, the USA lately, I think there's a lot of stuff people could still grab from that song and learn about themselves from it.
Also, I wanted to ask you, since you were talking a lot about scientific facts and you said some things that I didn't know. What did you study?
Oh, I never studied anything anything like scientific. I went into media and communications and English speaking cultures as my like side stuff. I don't even have a bachelor's degree yet. Still, after almost like 10 years of studying, but yeah, no, I'm not really in the sciences. I'm just really interested in what smarter people than myself have to say, and trying to grab little nubbins of that knowledge and just trying to apply them in my everyday life in a way that makes sense and doesn't make me come off as too like obnoxious and pretentious.
No, I was just wondering if it's something that you learned at school or if you were just curious about it and it's something that you looked into. So it looks like
I just watched a lot of shorts and a lot of short form content for way too long and way too much time in my life. So that's where some of the, I think I have some people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye to blame, because they were really, really good really early on with the like little highlight clips and their little monologues. And that's where I think I latched onto a lot of stuff and grabbed it for myself to like, run with it.
You already talked about a few songwriters that inspire you: Jordan Dreyer, Turnstile, I forgot his name.
Brendan Yates, I think was his name.
Yes, Rao Reynolds. Do you have any other lyricists that inspire you and that especially inspired you for I Hope You Heal?
Definitely. So one of the, I think, weirder references that I went to in the writing of the album was something very far outside of our own genre and bubble, but I've been preaching about their qualities in a lot of podcasts and interviews already, and that's a hip hop group called Clipping. They consist of two producers and they have one rapper. I would recommend to anyone to listen to Clipping, because what they do is something really interesting. They have a set theming for pretty much every one of their albums. And their rapper is called Daveed Diggs. And a lot of people might know him as an actor or a musical actor because he was in Hamilton as Lafayette. And Clipping is sort of his side project where he can like just do whatever he wants. And he does a very interesting thing in pretty much all the songs he's written. And that is like a very strict rejection of the first person perspective. So he never writes with a lyrical eye. And he never writes from that first person perspective. What that does is it engages you in a very different way, because at times when he's addressing someone in the song as you and you again, it feels engaging to you personally, even though you are not the one he's talking to or about. But it does something psychological that immerses you a lot more in the songs. And that is, for example, something that I think I almost subconsciously went on and used in WLW, Walk Life Wonderland, the opening song. I didn't realize it at first when I was in the middle of writing the lyrics for that song, but it was a song that is like fully written in second person and addressing someone as you. I couldn't tell you if it was intentional at the time, but I thought back to that and I was listening to Clipping the other day and I was like, wait a minute, they do that too. And maybe I've grabbed some of that from Clipping. And just overall, Daveed Diggs is just such a good like rap lyricist. His lyrics are so dense and he is incredibly fast and technical as a rapper, but he rarely sacrifices storytelling for the sake of being quick about something. One of the people I really gravitated towards in the time of writing I Hope You Heal was the Home Team. Really, really cool, like heavy pop band. And their singer, Brian Butcher, he is just really interesting in the way he like puts melody in his vocals and how he approaches some songs or some parts of songs in a way that is very pop heavy, but it keeps the grit of the kind of music that I enjoy. And so I've been listening to a lot of the Home Team while we were writing the album. And I always have to give shout outs to bands like Rise Against. Say Anything was my emo phase band of choice, while other people were listening to Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco. Back in the day, it was Say Anything for me. So yeah, those are all like very inspiring, have been major influences to me, aside from the obvious picks like Hot Mulligan, Spanish love songs. Lately, I'm a big fan of Deaf Heaven. So all of that stuff is, I would hope, kind of, coloring my writing style over time. I try to branch out a lot and try to like take in as much music as I can.
I definitely thought about Hot Mulligan while listening to your album, and they also have this thing of their music is comforting, but for them sometimes it's really devastating, like their latest album. Yeah.
Heavy stuff. And it's funny that you say that. It's funny you should say that, because just shortly before we went into the studio to record the album, we had a few sessions with Chris, with their lead guitarist. And we went over the songs with him and just tried to gather some feedback, from an outside perspective and from someone who was in sort of an accomplished band already.
The new record, they have no business making song titles that are so funny. And in the end, you cry on the song, like Monica Lewinsky-Bidi, and then the song is just me bawling my ass out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I heard from one of our friends, he's been going around with Hot Mulligan on their European dates lately as their videographer and photographer. Show Me Your Amounts just came about because I think someone in the crew or in the band got back into World of Warcraft really, really heavily and pretty much been playing that for a stupid amount of time. And someone asked them to see their mounts, their in-game, horses and flying creatures and everything. Nice little tidbit that I caught up on. Yeah. But yeah, they have some all-timers in their discographies, like Slumdog Scungillionaire is phenomenal. Yeah, and I've been trying to get the band to do more of that kind of stuff. Like even like without thinking about Hot Mulligan specifically, when we made our last EP before we released I Hope You Heal, which ended up being called Our Current Life, I pushed for the EP to be called 5 Very Cool Emo Punk Songs Not Featuring Travis Barker, but that got vetoed, unfortunately.
Oh no. But I don't know if people told you, if you realized it, because I haven't seen it in the comment, but when I first saw that you have a song called WLW, and I didn't know what it was about, I thought it was about lesbians.
Yes, I heard that. I was made painfully aware of the fact that in like fan fiction circles that WLW is not what I thought it was, but it is, apparently it stands for Women Loving Women.
Yes.
That was not the intention I had in mind. It was really just exclusively related to the song itself, but I think I overshot my target a bit. I think there was just one person who came up to us at a concert at some point, or it was like under just one singular Instagram post when the single came out. But yeah, I'm glad that not that many people have caught on to that so far, but you have to own up to it, because what else are you supposed to do about it?
So without you knowing it, you made like a funny title.
Yeah, it was a double entendre without being intended as one, apparently.
Exactly. Coming back to the line, we are going to talk about the song Soft Bite and the line, kiss me awake in the first blue light of day, give me the soft bite of the biggest shark in the bay. Very beautiful. Why did you choose this line?
Yeah, it's quite simply because I think it's the most romantic lines I've written so far in our band's career. I'm not really prone to writing like lovey-dovey or romantic songs, because I think there's just such a flood of like songs about romantic feelings out there, and I always said to myself, if I ever wrote a song about partners again, I'd like to be specific and be specific about them and have them, relate to my very own lived experience. And I think those lines are the best encapsulation of that, and the best uh, the best way of me doing that I've done so far, I think.
This song so is placed between Be Okay, which
Mm,
talks about kind of being lost but also acceptance and kind of being compassionate with yourself, and But Song,
yeah.
which is a song about loss. So you're really having a whole spectrum of emotions, and
Mm,
for me, you're getting pretty vulnerable on this album.
mm.
And is it another type of vulnerable for you? Is it harder to write, or did the line come for you very easily because you really relate to it and it's
I,
obvious for you?
yeah, good question. Ironically, I think it came really like quick and naturally, because I've had those one or two parts, those lines stuck in my head and in my notebook, in my scrapbook for a while, I think. And it's always been a matter of like waiting for the right song to come along to apply to that. Because yeah, it is quite literally like part of lived experience. It was on some day a few years ago when I woke up to a kiss from my partner way, way, way early in the day. I don't remember if they were going out to work or if they had somewhere to be, but I remember this like really gray, slightly bluish tinted light coming in from outside, and the whole thing was it just really stuck with me. Just these little displays of affection that are so completely unwarranted and uncalled for, but just they you make them and you receive them just because it's this very natural kind of love between two people. And I think I wrote it down in my phone later when I got when I actually woke up after I went to sleep for another 2 or 3 hours, I think. Similarly, everyone has that experience where your partner tends to be like have that cuteness aggression where you just feel like you want to bite a person because you don't really know how to express it in any other way. And I've been subject to that. We like sharks. That's basically the whole gist of it. And I tried to find a way to like incorporate everything together. And so that's how that came about. It's nice to have like these specific, very mundane memories attached to it that are just very nice to reminisce about.
In the end, this is what makes a relationship. It's not the big moments, but it's how you make the daily life
Yeah,
and all those
absolutely.
intentions.
Absolutely. And I've been noticing that more and more again lately, because in 2025, one of the other things that made that year really interesting is that I moved in together with my partner. So uh, this whole place is, we've only been here for about half a year, and just settling into that kind of life together has also been just something that is really, yeah, that's been really interesting, because you don't get to not see each other. And
Yeah.
it's as annoying as it can get, and as annoying as I can get, and as lazy and forgetful as I can get. It is just so nice to have that just natural mutual understanding and love just permeate everything.
And so this song is about them. At what point did you share the song with them? Before recording? At the end?
I don't think. Oops, sorry, Kea. I don't think I've ever shown that song like specifically to my partner, because it's a song about them, or I've never really let them know, because I don't really like that. I don't know, that kind of action of I made this for you, please appreciate it, feels weird to me. I like when they like the song by its own merits, and I don't like it. I don't want them to like it because there is something attached to it. That is just something that I always tend to like veer towards in terms of my engagement with other people, in terms of how I present the band to them. I try to keep it on the down low, because I don't like to like have anyone's perception of me altered just because I'm making music in a band. And even at that small scales that we are doing it always just, tends to kind of skew your perception of a person. And so, yeah, I try to keep it on the down low. I like to show my partner new demos we have because, they ask for it and they want to know what we've been up to. But I try not to like be too explicit about things because I also kind of think that it takes away from the magic of it a bit.
Yeah, I can get that, and to not have them listening to it and you checking out on all their reaction.
Yeah, being the person on the side, always like looking at them, how they might react and if they're reacting at all. So yeah, I try to avoid that experience just because I've been burned so many times.
Yeah, and it's also a way to keep, I guess, the song very open, and
Yeah.
it's just, do you still know their opinion about the song? Or
I know it's not their favorite of the album. I think their favorite was Aftermath. But I would hope that it's still, it found its way and it made its way to their appreciation at least. And I think I've been on the nose enough for them to know that it's specifically about them, just that I haven't really like spoken about it like directly, I think. But I think they're aware, yeah.
Just on a low key.
On the low key, yeah, absolutely. Try not to like come begging for it. Like I made this for you. It's more about the little things, I like to like leave an energy drink in the fridge or some treats somewhere, but that's the way I tend to roll.
Okay, so yeah, small attentions, as we said in the beginning. This is really not the grand gestures, but what you do on the daily basis.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what is just really important to me, because you can show affection and care in so many simpler ways that like help you and keep you going in the day to day, in the everyday life.
Now that you explained the light, I understand it a bit better. So this image of the shark, this metaphor of the shark is really about those. You said the word I forgot, when you want to bite someone because
a cuteness aggression.
Yeah, cuteness aggression.
Yeah, it's on the one hand it's that, and also it's like the idea that before we started dating and as we started dating, I was actually kind of terrified just because, I've been crushing on that person for a while, and it can be terrifying to like reflect on, oh my god, I am really like engaging on a romantic level with this person of all sorts, and it can be really scary, and having that shark in that song is just, I think, just the way of in the way of how love can be something really, really scary, even though it is not at its core, just as sharks are perceived as like really aggressive, scary creatures, while they are, fairly docile most of the time until as long as you don't like piss them off in any way. But they're really misunderstood creatures, and so are people, and so is like dating people. That is, it's something that is misunderstood and overanalyzed, and I like just to feel the feelings.
And what were you scared of exactly? Because there could be a million things to be scared of in the beginning of a relationship.
I mean, it's it's always the idea of almost imposter syndrome, like, because I tend to like put people on a pedestal a little bit, especially when it's like in the first phases of dating, and it's this scary thing of them realizing I'm not what I'm made out to be, and they are deserving of something much better, and then they might leave, and which is perfectly justified, by the way. I do not want to misconstrue that. I don't want to be misconstrued in that way. But just the engagement with someone that you think is just so freaking cool and beautiful and intelligent, full of perspective and craftiness, especially when you have a fairly low self-esteem and a fairly bad image of yourself in your head. It can be just kind of intimidating in a way.
And has this relationship also helped you with your self-esteem and
Oh,
your
absolutely. Yeah.
self-confidence?
I don't. Yeah, I do not think I would be at the point in my life where I am right now if it weren't for my better half, my partner,
Oh.
whatever you want to call it. We've been dating for going on pretty much 5 years at this point, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot I have learned in those 5 years, and there's a lot I'm still learning, and there's a lot I'm still hoping to learn about myself, about living as an adult, about taking responsibility, about being creative, about creative problem solving, about just tackling things and doing things instead of thinking about doing things. And that's something. This relationship has really helped me a lot with that, I think.
And I think this is what love should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Learn from each other and appreciate each other.
Mm-hmm.
See how it's not about changing as a person, it's about changing, you know, evolving who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Not just outright switching one thing out for the other, but bringing the best you in a way. And
Yeah.
it's been said a million times before, but it is just what it is, I think.
Yeah, it reminds me of a line of Alexis on Fire in Rough Hands. Sometimes love isn't about how much someone suits you, but how much you're willing to change to suit them.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
not be a different person for them, but just accepting to evolve and to grow with them.
Yeah, and I think growth is just really the core thing about everything, because it's a use it or lose it thing. The moment you stop going forwards, you start going backwards, and to have someone who keeps pushing you forward is something just incredibly valuable. And if there's anything like that for any one of the people out there, hold on to that, guys, really, and try to like think about how you can help them, how they can help you. And don't confuse evolution for change, and don't confuse inspiration for being forced to do something. And when you're in that sweet spot, I think you're golden.
Sometimes we hear that love is difficult, and the difficult part is just growing on yourself, making the change on yourself. This is, I think, the only difficult part that being in a couple should be.
And owning up to what faults you have, and have taking responsibility for them. I've been thinking about responsibility a lot lately, and how it is something that you cannot expect someone to have, but you should always enable someone to like find it in themselves, I think.
Coming back to the song itself and the album, when did this song come from?
Ooh, I think it was sometime like really like just in the middle of the songwriting process. We don't really write chronologically. We just assemble the set list and the track list for an album in a way that just makes sense to us and flows well over time, because you always have to consider like the how the average listener likes the album to ebb and flow, and that you just don't want to front load everything. If I remember correctly, it was really just somewhere in the middle of things. We wrote the album between January and I think July of 2024. I think most of the songs were, at least like in their frameworks and their basic demos, done by May of 2024. So it has to be somewhere in that like 4 or 5 months time frame. I couldn't tell you when exactly it was, but I think it was towards the back half, but not like the last song we finished, I think.
Talking about last song, so the last song is called I Hope You Heal. And it really encapsulates, I think, the whole album. So repeating myself, but again, this whole comforting and sad feeling. Because is it the last line when you say, I hope you heal from the things no one apologized for?
That was fairly deliberate. I mean, it's not something I think that we came up with, because I found ever since we wrote that, and I think Malte wrote those specific lines or most of that
Mhm.
song, I think I've seen that phrase printed on some like home decor and some of those like major displays or something after writing the song. But it is just something that I think is really just a sentiment that you don't get to hear often enough, because there's so much struggle inherent in the human experience. And there's stuff that you will never talk about to anyone. And I have stuff that I've never talked about to anyone. And just the idea of wishing someone to like engage with that, to tackle that, to work through that, and to have a healing process rise from that is, I think, something that we don't put enough focus on.
Mhm.
There's so much things that are short term, and you can only do so much about things that you know. But how are you supposed to do something about something that you don't really even know about? And just giving that grace to ourselves and to other people and putting it out there is something that I think is really beautiful. And I am very grateful and thankful to Malte for just putting that in the song and putting that on the album and putting it as like the mission statement of the album, because
Mhm.
I too think it works just really well as like an emotional core, not like a literal core of the album where we just go over everything we've done throughout the album, but just the this idea of looking out for others, caring for them, and being aware of how, we relate to each other. I think that's the whole core of it, and I think it's
Mhm.
really nice that you caught on to that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's just a really nice line, and that everyone can take personally. And
I'm always happy when it turns out to work that way for people. I cannot, guarantee that what we write down and what we put on a song will be perceived exactly as such. There's this saying that as soon as an album releases, it's not your own anymore. But
Mhm.
I think it's really nice to have something like that and a phrase like that and something to put out there and make it the last thing they hear of the album, just to have that phrase that everyone can project something about themselves onto and make it their own, because that's what the experience of music, listening to music, is all about. I think making something your own and attributing your own meanings to them and attaching your own the ideas and thoughts and experiences to them is just one of the most beautiful things about music, I think.
In the end, it's art, and art is subjective, and everyone
Right.
interprets it their own way.
Yeah. And so who am I to like prescribe something towards other people on how they should perceive us and how they should read into our music? That's not how I want to do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving us some insights into your new album and into your inspirations. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's been my pleasure. And I've, once when I first stumbled upon your podcast, I saw that uh, little compilation of all your guests you've had on, and just to see Kim from Chasing Dreams on here, who have played support for us in 2024, and then Jordan Dreyer next to that, and then
Yeah.
Mario from Blackout Problems. It is really a pleasure and kind of an honor to be, among those people who've been guests on this podcast.
Thank you for agreeing on accepting being a guest. And
Yeah,
so now
absolutely.
2026 is starting. As at the time we are recording, you have a show in Hanover in 4 days on the 17th, but it will be before the episode is released. You
Yeah,
gave us a bit of a glimpse of what could happen in 2026.
in the next few months down the line, hopefully, yeah.
So stay tuned.
Yes. Please do, guys. I hope it's going to be cool, and I hope by the time that those things might happen, that my hand will be fit enough to play the guitar again. So I don't have to like substitute anything, or we don't have to do any substitutions for that.
Yeah, because for some context, so you broke your wrist a month
Yeah.
ago, went
Yeah.
through surgery, and so for your next show, you won't be able to play the guitar.
Exactly, that's what it is. Yeah, so we have to like make some concessions for Hanover, but I hope and I think we're at least proficient enough to like do tinker around and make for a night that doesn't really like lose anything of the core experience. And as long as I keep my hand and my wrist and my arm in something protective for the time being, we might still just you know do some wacky stuff on stage and have some energy going there.
Yeah, and I guess it's pretty different from playing the guitar where you kind of have to stay in place and you have something to do with your hands to
Yeah,
just
I mean,
holding the mic.
it will be quite the switch up, I think, to just not have something to do with the breaks where I don't sing. Usually, you just have that fail safe that you can just concentrate on playing the guitar for a bit. But I know, no, it's gonna be fun. I really look forward to it.
Once again, Joost, thank you very much for being here, and everyone stay tuned. For everyone listening, go listen to Catapults and their new album, I Hope You Heal. Wherever you listen to your music, go follow them on Instagram because, as we said, there are very good news coming very soon. You can also follow me on Instagram at Into the Cave Pod, like, subscribe, comment, anything that helps. And I will talk to you again next week with a new guest. And meanwhile, be kind to yourself. Bye.
Bye bye.